It's very simple. It means that I have to continue to learn, and all the learnings that I took from the University of Cape Town when I was a student and other places where I've been able to learn, to study, to work, represent exactly why this accolade is important. It gives me that opportunity to continue to do more, and most importantly, to contribute wherever is possible for the next generation. I think working with the African Union with the Africa CDC to make the Africa CDC known to more African was a key part. To allow every citizen on this continent to be able to donate according to the means to the Africa CDC was a key component. To have NCDs becoming non-communicable diseases, becoming a key part of what the foundation of Ecobank I work for does, was also very important, because getting 14,000 employees across Africa to think about how their actions every day can actually change somebody's life beyond just banking was also very important. And most importantly, I continue to read, I continue to write articles and share ideas with friends and colleagues. We have to remember that the continent is made of young people that are always innovating. If you think about individuals in the streets of Kampala or the streets of Abidjan, the streets of Cairo, they find ways to make the ends meet. And this kind of innovation, we don't often speak about it. So yes, COVID was important to remind us that we need to think about the social aspects. And I can think about in Ghana, the opportunity that young people have had to create solar-powered hand-washing solution. I can think also of young Senegalese that are working around finding a solution for hospitals to be able to treat patients without necessarily having human contact. And those are some of the examples from West Africa, but also we have from in Malawi and other parts of the continent where the ingenuity of looking at COVID-19 as an opportunity to demonstrate what we already knew, that young people on this continent have a lot of skills, are actually being present. And for me, that gives me reassurances that it doesn't always have to be in the formal setting. And if we start to think about the opportunities that exist in the informal sector, which is very close to my heart because that's where a lot of young urban Africans find themselves, we will start to find that pathway of transformation that the continent needs to think about. And learning institutions need to benefit from what all these young individuals are doing, and maybe invite them to the classroom, even if it's virtually, for them to be able to explain to students that have the opportunity to be in formal education what it means to learn without necessarily having a professor every day, what it means to learn without having a teacher. And that is, for me, is part of the innovation, actually documenting what the young people of this continent are doing when they're not in a classroom. As long as we see external funding as being a catalyst or additional, then we have an opportunity. If we rely only on external funding to be able to fund the development, then we have an issue. COVID-19 has demonstrated that we all more or less in the same boat when it comes to the challenges that domestic issues have come up, the domestic issues that have come up. At the same time, we also realize there's an opportunity to think about how do we create value with what we have. A lot of African countries have natural resources. Do we continue to export them raw, or do we start to find those jobs that would transform them? The African Continental Free Trade Area offers that opportunity to say, if I want something that is being made in Lesotho, how do I make sure that I can buy it if I'm sitting in Cape Verde? And those are the kind of changes that we need to see more and more. Every country that has reached a certain level made sure that the agriculture was top-notch. And we still have progress to make around agriculture. Then we think about manufacturing, and then you can think about taking that path towards industrialization. So financing development, for me, is more a question of where do we want to use the skills that we have on the continent, not necessarily in a specific country, to move toward that common goal. Today, we have two big agendas, Agenda 2063, which by the African Union wants us to make sure that we reach a certain level by 2063. Those that thought about it understood that they may not be around when we reach 2063, but they gave us a pathway to follow, so that we start to think about what resources we have on the continent. And ultimately, we shouldn't think about always want to be like the other person or the other country, because development doesn't mean necessarily that we need to copy. Development means that we have enough food on the table, job opportunities for the 1.3 billion Africans that are on this continent, and ultimately the ability to export those skills and resources to help other countries that may be in that situation. My final point on this is that Africa is the youngest continent, and the skills on this continent will be required for the rest of the world. So when we think about financing the development, we can't think of Africa as in one part and then the rest of the world. We are all in this together, because the reservoir of young people need to be trained, need to be skilled, so that whatever we do here on this continent is for also the rest of the world. We can finance our own development. We just have to make sure that we go at a pace that we can afford. The sovereign funds are important when you start to have excess that you're built up, and then you want to make sure that you have some for rainy days or for bigger projects that will really change the face of your people, the face of your country, and change the structure of the economy and allow more people to either benefit from it. Now, you need excess. You need more to be able to stash away. And if you don't have a more at the moment, how do you better use what you have so that the people in the continent, the people in your country, can actually move along that path of development? So I'm not necessarily against having a sovereign fund. I think it's a good idea, but you need the access. And today, there are not many countries that actually have the excess resources to actually put that money aside, because there are many priorities that need to be addressed. Education, health are these two key issues that most countries are grappling with, partly because of COVID, but it's been accentuated. And how do you ensure that people are still having access to better health system and better education when resources are scarce? So it has to be part of a broader policy framework in terms of having a sovereign wealth fund. It can't just be something that you just decide to do because your neighbor is doing it, therefore you want to do it. So there are 170,000 alumni from the University of Cape Town. It means that if every single alumni chooses to contribute a rand or any other currency per month, we may have at least 170,000 rand per month. That can allow at least one, maybe two students a full year of study. That's what it should be about. It should have a purpose. Individual philanthropy, we can learn from our mothers that had stokvels, as you call it in South Africa, susu or pamoja in different parts of the world, where they always came together to make sure that they were that solidarity, that awareness about the issues in the community, and most importantly, create the connections. And here, if we think that education is key for the continent, then sparing a rand to be able to come together as UCT alumni to allow the next generation to have access to better education, like the quality education that we got here at UCT, that at least I got here at UCT, and we think that it is important, then a rand might be a good way to start. And people have to trust that the university is able to actually use those resources. And I can certainly attest that many people have benefited from the system, but individuals need to realize that it is possible. And even if you feel that the rand that you're going to give is not enough, just think about the 169,000 others that will also be able to give a rand. And that makes a whole difference. It is a model that we've used in our communities, and there's no reason why this UCT community cannot do the same. It's an interesting one, because I tend to think that a lot of Africans still have to resolve basic problems. Access to water, access to education, access to sanitation. A lot part of the continent that's still battling with neglected tropical diseases. These are diseases of poverty. And how do we then make more resources available for the fourth industrial revolution when we still can't fix issues like neglected tropical diseases where basically science has demonstrated that you can actually solve it. So I'm not against the idea of a fourth industrial revolution. I think the context in which we are today, with the majority of Africans still living in rural areas, we have to balance between the two. Of course, there are certain sectors of society that might be ready for the fourth industrial revolution, but how will this impact the majority of Africans? And I think today we need impact. And if this impact through the fourth industrial revolution would deliver on this, okay. But at the moment, from where I stand and for what I see, there are some simple things that we can do to make somebody's life better that doesn't require the fourth industrial revolution. And those basic things means access to water, clean water, access to education, access to health. And if most individuals have good health and good education, they can contribute to society. And that is important. And we have more people that are able to actually take a stand and help maybe us through the fourth industrial revolution. I'm rereading a book which is called The Road Less Traveled. So my father gave it to me more than 20 years ago when I first left my home country of Cote d'Ivoire and I was in Zimbabwe. And reading it again more than 20 years later, I understand a little bit better why he gave me that book. And you know, the book starts with this line which says that life is difficult. And it is true that life is difficult, but we have some of those solutions that can help us through. And then I'm reading also two other books by an Ivorian writer that I had not read his work before, which really talks about his experience of being in France as a sans-papier, as they call them, or undocumented migrant. And it's another narrative of who we are as a community, as Africans, but also as a world, because the question about undocumented migrant is very key to what it means to be not only in Europe but also in Africa, what it means to be an African who's an undocumented migrant in Africa. It's a challenge that we are grappling with at the moment. So those are the two books that I'm reading, two different aspects, nothing complicated. One sort of going through the process of rethinking where I am today in my life, and then the other one continue to think about this part of society that contributes a lot to the world, but is often not necessarily recognized because the document is missing. Connection is key. Wherever you're in the world, remember that we are a community that learned at UCT, sometimes failed, and it is a combination of these two that made us stronger. UCT Alumni Connect is an important place for us to go to see what is happening in the community and make acquaintances with people that you may not have met during your time at university. And most importantly, find a way and a good reason to give forward to UCT. It is important because if 170,000 of us contribute in different ways, it can be through money, it can be through your time, it can also be through how you bring people to look at UCT as a place of learning and a place that allowed you to be where you are today. understand a little bit better why he gave me that book. And you know, the book starts with this line which says that life is difficult. And it is true that life is difficult, but we have some of those solutions that can help us. And then I'm reading also 2 other books by an Ivorian writer that I had not read his work before, which really talks about his experience of being in France as a sans-papier, as they call them, or undocumented migrant. And it's another narrative of who we are as a community, as African, but also as well. Because the question about undocumented migrant is very key to what it means to be not only in Europe but also in Africa, what it means to be an African who's an undocumented migrant in Africa. It's a challenge that we are grappling with at the moment. So those are the 2 books that I'm reading, 2 different aspects, nothing complicated. One sort of going through the process of rethinking where I am today in my life, and then the other one continue to think about this part of society that contributes a lot to the world, but is often not necessarily recognized because the document is missing.
And lastly, what would be your 2021 message to this big audience of 170,000 alumni?
Contribute to UCT. In whichever way you can do it. It can be through wherever you are in the world, demonstrate that you can help with knowledge. If you can send some money to the university, do so. If you can help somebody to think about UCT as a place to study, do so. Because that's what it's about. It's about ensuring that the 170,000 community that we have, which is spread across the world, remembers that it all started here at UCT. And if we can do so, we only have a much bigger institution, not necessarily bigger in terms of size, but bigger in terms of the number of people that we have impacted in our lives. And that's what I try to do.
I want you just to repeat that answer, no? Not verbatim, just to repeat the answer, because I want you to, I want to slip in a call to action here. I want you to ask people to connect with you on UCT Alumni Connect. You know, we've got that.
Okay.
I think you're on. You are a member.
Yeah.
So that you can continue the conversation or whatever. But I need to slip in a call to action there.
Okay, so what was your question?
My question was, what is your 2021 message to alumni?
Connection is key. Wherever you're in the world, remember that we are a community that learned at UCT, sometimes failed, and it is the combination of these 2 that made us stronger. UCT Alumni Connect is an important place for us to go to see what is happening in the community and make acquaintances with people that you may not have met during your time at university. And most importantly, find a way and a good reason to give forward to UCT. It is important because if 170,000 of us contribute in different ways, it can be through money, it can be through your time, it can also be through how you bring people to look at UCT as a place of learning and a place that allowed you to be where you are today. You will do some editing.
Awesome.
Yeah. Perfect.
To make
Perfect. I mean, I've got 2 things I'm thinking about. I think that, I don't have the knowledge to make it happen. I think that you should be lecturing at the GSB.